Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive. The topic for this is what could have been. And as you may have guessed with the thumbnail, we're going to be talking about Tyler Breeze. Tyler Breeze, to me, is a wrestler who I thought was a no-brainer, was going to be a major star, a major player in the pro wrestling world. He was someone that, even going back to his local FCW days, I would see, and we'll cover that in a second. And he always had that it factor. He had that likability. I don't know where the disconnect was. I don't know, maybe he was just too nice, and maybe he didn't say no enough to enough things that kind of derailed his career. But we're going to cover it a bit here and talk about some of the high points of his career, where I think he could have been, what maybe they should have done with him. Let's dive right in. We're going to start this off in 2013. There's a wrestler in FCW named Mike Dalton, which, if you don't know, was the gimmick that Tyler Breeze had before he was Tyler Breeze. And Mike Dalton had some charisma. He had a lot of success in FCW, but he was kind of tied to gimmicks that worked in the late 80s, early 90s, like the Rock and Roll Express or the Rockers. He kind of had that look and kind of had that vibe to him. And not saying that's a bad thing. It just felt like there was a certain ceiling with the Mike Dalton character. Well, famously, it's been said several times, Tyler Breeze has said it himself, he was on the cusp of being let go. So on the precipice of that, he created the Tyler Breeze character, which basically, in my estimation, was an update to the Rick Martel model character. He had a lot of the same mannerisms. He talked about himself like he was a model, kind of took a lot of inspiration from the Zoolander movie, and put his own updated spin on it. This was something that almost instantly connected with the fans. He went from someone with the Mike Dalton character where fans liked him and cared about him, but he was never going to be anybody's favorite wrestler, to being kind of one of the favorite wrestlers of NXT at the time. He was one of the guys that really helped in that initial transition of NXT going off of, I think it was on Hulu at the time, the streaming service, or it may have been just on WWE.com, to where it was one of the flagships of the WWE network, especially in the early days when there was very little new, fresh content. You had this brand new show showcasing a lot of the young talents that are pretty much the mainstays of the industry now. The Wyatt family, Seth Rollins, the Shield members of the New Day, they were all in that NXT grouping, that original network conglomerate of them. And Breeze, he made himself one of the top players in the company, in NXT, in a rather rapid pace. Then we started to come into what I think were some of the reasons why he didn't quite get to where I think he could have been, and that's starting in 2014. So basically, a year or so after the Tyler Breeze character is created, he's making a name for himself. We start getting to the era where NXT morphed a little bit. Instead of it being just strictly a developmental with all brand new wrestlers, they started bringing in more of the wrestlers that were getting buzzes in the indie circuit or on Ring of Honor or New Japan. This is when we first started seeing the classes of like Sami Zayn, Finn Balor coming over, Kevin Owens coming in, Kenta coming over as Hideo Itami. And as talented and as great as these wrestlers were and still are, I mean, Owens, Balor, and Zayn are pretty much upper level talent and have been for a long while. One of the negatives of that, and I love all those wrestlers, don't get me wrong, one of the negative aspects of that are people like Tyler Breeze that were already there and on the roster kind of took a back seat to them. And this would have been the first sign of a little bit of a misread or a misfire with the way he was pushed. To me, I think he would have looked a lot better if he got big wins over some of these guys and he was the guy that they were trying to catch up to. But I digress. Part of the other reason is I don't think WWE called him up to the main roster fast enough. He was allowed to languish and lose importance again with the shiny new toys and him being pushed to the back burner. He kind of lost some of that traction that he gained basically all on his own, which leads us into probably the highlight of his career. And that's in 2015 at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. Jushin Thunder Liger, one of the absolute legends in pro wrestling, wrestled exactly one match under the WWE umbrella. And that match is against Tyler Breeze. And again, this to me should have been a moment that put Tyler Breeze back into the top, back into prominence, back into the main area, being one of the main players in the company. But again, it feels like the ball got dropped. Not much long after that, he was called up. In October of 2015, he gets called up to the main roster. He's put into a feud almost instantly with Dolph Ziggler, which is a guy that he was very comparable to. He had a lot of the same talent as Ziggler, but for whatever reason, it just never felt like he gained traction. One of the main things is he lost a lot of those matches against Dolph Ziggler, and I don't think he was ever made a priority. He wasn't given an immediate push like someone like Fandango was, which we'll cover him here in a moment. He wasn't someone that they presented as someone coming to take over like they did with the Shield or the Wyatt family. He was just basically presented of, okay, here's another guy for the show. No matter how interesting he is or how impactful he was, they kind of stunted his growth. Now fast forward a bit, he's kind of floundering, Fandango's kind of floundering. They put him together as Breezango, which, silly name, I understand. But again, he strikes gold. They're one of the most entertaining things on their show. It's one of the things that wrestling fans are tuning in to watch, to see the Fashion Police segments, to see them wrestle. And yes, it leaned a little bit more into the comedy, but you're starting to see the different aspects of him and how he can work and how he can be used in a lot of different ways. Again, as popular as Breezango was, as good as they were as a tag team, they kind of felt like also rans in the tag team division. And you may notice a trend here that every time Breeze got to a point where he was on the precipice of greatness, for whatever reason, he butted up against that glass ceiling and butted up against it hard and never broke through. Basically, the Breezango run was what he went with till his end of his WWE tenure, and it's really disappointing to him. Because if you look at it, if you really look at Tyler Breeze, and one of the things that really stands out about this is his work with Xavier Woods on Up, Up, Down, Down. If you're someone that watches Up, Up, Down, Down a lot, you will see the chemistry these two have together, how quick-witted Tyler Breeze is, and Woods too. Woods is fantastic. You will see the genuine likability, the way he connects to his fans. And this is one of those things that I think at times WWE is a bit behind with. Kind of like with Matt Cardona when he was Zack Ryder. They didn't really capitalize on Tyler Breeze and his popularity on YouTube with either Up, Up, Down, Down or the different things he would do on Twitch where him and Adam Cole and Cesaro and Woods would play games together and build a great following there. There's still a lot of things where WWE doesn't capitalize on people branching out and doing things like that that should be bringing a different and bigger audience into WWE, but it's almost like people get punished for that in a way. I use this as an example because he's still part of Up, Up, Down, Down now, and you can instantly see the charisma. You can instantly see that this guy has it. He has something that fans care about. And that's going to be my main thing I want to talk about here, and basically my big speaking point on this. We covered his highlights, we covered some of the ways that they dropped the ball on him, and again, I think it may be because he's too nice of a person, whereas they would say to him, you're going to lose to Dolph Ziggler, he goes, sure, I'll do that for the company. Or they said something that, we're going to have you put this guy over, and he was happy to do it. He may have served better to be a little bit of a jerk, kind of like Shawn Michaels was at his build, where if they wanted Shawn Michaels to do something that made Shawn Michaels look bad, he wasn't going to do it. Whereas Tyler Breeze, a team player, he did everything. No matter if it made him look great, no matter if it made him look bad. And for me, someone that was always a huge Tyler Breeze fan, it was really disappointing because I'm looking at this guy, and to compare it for those of you that play like NBA 2K, if you play in GM mode and you get to the draft and you're looking at the different players you want to draft, and they have a floor and a ceiling, it'll say something like, this center coming out of college, his floor might be DeAndre Jordan, but his ceiling is Akeem Olajuwon. Or it'll have a point guard, and the point guard will say his floor might be Markelle Fultz, but his ceiling is John Stockton. And to me, if I was scouting Tyler Breeze, his floor would have been The Miz, and his ceiling would have been Shawn Michaels. I think at the very least, Tyler Breeze should have been a guy just like The Miz, who was firmly entrenched in the upper middle card where he could be a tag champion, a Intercontinental champion, a U.S. champion, a world champion is needed, and used as basically a utility tool, kind of like The Miz is, where no matter where you put him on the card, he's always going to have a good spot on the card. His ceiling to me was being Shawn Michaels, or being the guy that's one of the big stars of that generation. And I really think that Tyler Breeze had that in him. I really think he could have been in a position where Cody Rhodes is now, or Seth Rollins is right now. He could have been one of those guys. Now, where I think there may have been some pushback on that is he wasn't the biggest guy on the roster. He wasn't the smallest either. It may have been perceived as he was a one-trick pony, but I think he proved through everything he did he wasn't. The different aspects of Breeze, whether you look at his NXT run or his Breezango run, there was complexity, there was nuances to that. And I think it's just one of those things that maybe the fans seen something in Tyler Breeze that the management or the people that make decisions didn't, because I know the fans loved him. I don't think I've met one wrestling fan that's ever talked about Tyler Breeze in a negative aspect. They all have something positive to say about him, which to me sounds like someone you want to push to the moon. I hope it does to you too. If I'm running a wrestling company and all my fans love one guy, okay, we're going to run with him. He's the guy that they love, kind of like LA Knight right now. When I talk about what ifs in wrestling, what could have been, stuff like what if Magnum TA never had his accident, what if Brian Pillman hadn't passed away before the Attitude Era really went into full swing, what if the Owen Hart tragedy never happened. Tyler Breeze is up there without necessarily having the negative connotations. Almost like, what if WWE really got behind Shane Douglas instead of making him Dean Douglas? Breeze could have been one of those players that really defines and changes a generation of wrestling fans, and he could have been one of those guys that's the flag bearer and one of the standard bearers for the company for decades. I mean, the guy's still in phenomenal shape. If you see him, he's wrestling on the indies right now. If you see him, he still hasn't lost a step. He still looks great. He still can do everything he could do in his prime. I don't know, to me, he's one of the biggest lost opportunities, especially of the NXT era, almost like a guy that just recently returned. Carlito was in the Ruthless Aggression era, or Mr. Kennedy to an extent. Tyler Breeze is another one of those guys that probably should have been a main eventer, but for whatever reason just didn't get to that, just wasn't pushed to that extent. But he was absolutely great in my opinion. I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you think that Tyler Breeze wasn't pushed as well as he should have been, was pushed rated what you would expect from him, or maybe was over pushed? Maybe to you think Tyler Breeze was nothing more than enhancement talent? Let me know your opinion on Tyler Breeze down here in the comments. While you're there, smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. All of that really helps me out, and it also would help out if you click on that join button and become a member. We have memberships starting out at 99 cents, and it would really help me and help my channel out, help me to get new equipment, help me to put more of a budget into these videos. I would definitely appreciate it if you considered it. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been my opinion of what could have been with Tyler Breeze.